My question for you on the financing behind commercial. Like I go around and there's, CMBS is commercial mortgage-backed securities, the same as derivatives that brought down the subprime market. That's the financing structure underneath commercial that's going to collapse.
Sure. There's considerable ripple effect, Robert. So let's take it from the tenant's perspective all the way up to the investor in the CMBS, the commercial mortgage-backed security. So what's going on with tenants? They're not paying the rent. Depending on the area, between 50 and 90% of tenants are not paying rent right now. They can't afford it. They've been shut down. You think a hair salon or a bar or a restaurant that's closed is paying the rent? They can't. And a lot of states have put in eviction abatement, meaning you can't evict them. They may still be on the premises. They're not paying rent. So that gives a little, and I'm not making good, bad judgments. I'm just telling you what's going on. So that gives a little cash flow relief to the tenant. But what does it do to the landlord? Well, the landlord is leveraged himself, meaning, yeah, I got tenants paying me rent, but they're not paying me rent. But meanwhile, I got a mortgage on the property. So that means you can't pay the bank. So does that mean all the losses fall on the banks? Well, by and large, no, because the banks took those loans and bundled them into commercial mortgage-backed security and pushed them out there. Where are they? They might be in your 401k and you don't even know it. Because if you bought some, you're sitting there at work and you get your 401k sign-up form or your IRA sign-up form or whatever, and you're like, yeah, I'll take a fund, real estate fund. That sounds good or whatever. They could be in your portfolio. You got to dig and look, But you're right. And by the way, all this takes time. This takes a year to play out. It doesn't happen overnight. So first, as I say, the bar, the restaurant, some of them will reopen. Over half of them are actually closed for good. Everyone's like, the restaurants are closed. Will reopen when the pandemic's over. No, they're not reopening. They're closed. The ovens are up for sale at fire sale prices. The lease is broken. The storefront's empty, and there are no tenants. That's the reality on the ground. Okay, so then it falls on the landlord who can't pay the mortgage. They may or may not go into default, probably will, or at least they're banging on the lender's doors trying to renegotiate the loans. Ultimately, it comes back to these securities and there will be massive losses, but it could take a year to ripple through.
Given the worst case scenario, let's say you either own the restaurant or you worked for the restaurant and it's shut down. So that's the worst case scenario, but that's a pretty bad scenario. You're now one of the 45% of the GDP and 50% of the employees.
Right.
Our production's been crushed.
Correct.
Okay. And then what happens is, what would you say to somebody who's either lost their job or afraid they're going to lose their job or they've lost their business? You have any suggestions of how you navigate out of that?
So during the worst part of the lockdown, although again we're now getting into lockdown phase 2, but March and April, my wife and I usually go out to dinner on a Friday night or a Saturday night. Well, we weren't going out to dinner. We were up in our farm in New England on the mountain, hunkered down just like everybody else. Well, eventually by July, some of the restaurants reopened and we went out to dinner. Well, if we had skipped 15 dinners, which we did, and we went out to dinner, we didn't order 15 meals. We ordered one like we usually do. In other words, all those meals that were skipped, that was permanently lost. There was no pent up demand. Yeah, I went out to dinner, but I didn't order all those skipped meals. That's gone. If the restaurant's even open, which in many cases they're not. So let's say you're one of the employees. What people are doing, Robert, is they're saving. Savings rates have skyrocketed. Now, that's not a bad strategy. If you lost your job, you don't want to spend like crazy. You're probably trying to pay the rent or your kids' tuition or your health care, whatever. But even people who have not lost their jobs are saying, well, maybe I'm next. How do I know my business isn't the next one to fail? How do I know I'm not the next one to get laid off? So they're saving as well. In the individual case, that's a good strategy, but in the aggregate case, it's a disaster for the economy because when you have more saving, you have less consumption, right? You get money, maybe not, but if you get money, you can spend it or you can save it. Well, if you increase savings, you're going to reduce spending. That's another reason we're in a depression and we're going into a second technical recession right now. And that's why it's going to be very hard for this economy to dig out. And in my book, I talk about, getting back to the individual, Yeah, I counsel I have three children. They're all the millennials. They're kind of in the older echelon of the millennials, but they're all they're all under 40. They're all in their 30s. But when they were in their late 20s and out of college, and their friends, I would counsel a lot of them, and it was tough getting jobs. In 2008, 2009, and I said, well, start your own business. Create your own job, make your own job. And they did. Many of them did, and they're having some success. So don't give up. If your job as a waiter or bartender is gone and you're having a tough time getting one back, well, think of something that people needs, even in difficult economic times. And can you provide that, or can you join with a group in a startup situation? It's easier said than done. It's a lot of hard work. But starting your own business or teaming up with people to provide a needed service is an alternative.